The lock clicked behind me and I stood there on the porch in my nightgown, barefoot, watching my breath turn into white clouds in the freezing air. February in Michigan is no joke, and it was past midnight. Michael had actually done it. He actually threw me out of my own house. "Go to your family then," he'd screamed just seconds before. His face red and twisted with rage. "Hope you don't freeze out there." I heard him slide the chain lock. My hands were already shaking, and not just from the cold. I wrapped my arms around myself, the thin cotton nightgown doing absolutely nothing against the wind. Snow was piled up on either side of the walkway, and I could see my car in the driveway, but my keys were inside. My phone was inside. My shoes were inside. Everything was inside. This wasn't the first time Michael had lost his temper, but it was definitely the worst. We'd been married for 3 years, and somewhere along the way, the man I'd fallen in love with had turned into someone I barely recognized. Tonight's fight had started over something stupid. I'd made chicken for dinner instead of the beef he wanted. That's it. That's all it took. "You never listened to me," he'd yelled, shoving the plate away. "I told you this morning I wanted steak." "We didn't have any," I'd said quietly, trying to keep my voice calm. "I used what we had in the fridge." But that just made it worse. It always made it worse when I tried to explain. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward, and then he was in my face, screaming about how I was useless, how I couldn't do anything right, how he worked all day and couldn't even come home to a decent meal. I'd made the mistake of saying, maybe I should just go stay with my parents for a few days. His eyes went cold. "Yeah. You wanna leave? Then leave. Get out. Get out right now." "Michael, I didn't mean." "I said get out." He'd grabbed my arm and dragged me to the front door. I was still in my nightgown because it was almost bedtime. I tried to pull away, tried to reason with him, but he wasn't hearing any of it. He shoved me out onto the porch and slammed the door so hard the wreath fell off. And now here I was, standing in the cold, feeling like the world's biggest idiot. I turned back to the door and pounded on it. "Michael! Michael, please. It's freezing out here. At least let me get my coat." Nothing. Just silence from inside the house. I tried the doorbell. Rang it over and over. Still nothing. My feet were going numb on the concrete. I looked down and saw they were already turning red. Panic started creeping in. This was dangerous. Like actually dangerous. The temperature had to be in the low 20s, and with the wind chill, it felt even colder. I thought about breaking a window. We had a big picture window in the front, and I could probably grab a rock from the garden and smash it. But what then? Michael was unstable right now. If I broke the window and climbed in, would he call the cops? Would he hurt me worse? I was seriously considering it, trying to decide if I should risk it, when I heard a door open next to me. "Honey, what on earth are you doing out here?" It was Mrs. Anderson, our neighbor from the house to the right. She was in her 70s, a sweet woman I'd chatted with a few times when I was checking the mail. She was wrapped in a thick bathrobe and slippers, standing in her lit doorway, looking at me with concern all over her face. My teeth started chattering so hard I could barely get words out. "I got locked out. Locked out. In your nightgown." She stepped out onto her own porch, squinting at me through the darkness. "Where's Michael?" "Inside," I managed to say. Her expression changed. I watched understanding dawn on her face, followed by something that looked like anger. "He locked you out. In this weather." I couldn't answer. I was shaking too hard now, and my legs felt weird, like they couldn't quite hold me up anymore. "Oh no you don't," Mrs. Anderson said firmly. She hurried down her porch steps as fast as her old legs could carry her and grabbed my arm. "Come on, sweetheart. Come inside right now. I don't want to be any trouble." "Nonsense. You'll freeze to death out here. Come on." She practically dragged me into her house, and the warmth hit me like a wall. I'd never been so grateful for central heating in my life. She shut the door behind us and immediately started rubbing my arms. "Oh, you poor thing. You're like ice. Can you feel your feet?" "Barely," I admitted. Sit down, sit down." She guided me to her couch and wrapped an afghan around my shoulders, then disappeared into what I assumed was her bedroom. She came back with a pair of thick socks and fuzzy slippers. "Put these on. I'll make you some tea." I wanted to cry from the kindness. I bent down to put the socks on, but my hands were shaking too badly to manage it. Mrs. Anderson knelt down in front of me, her old knees cracking, and gently pulled the socks onto my feet herself. "There we go," she said softly. "Better." "Thank you," I whispered. "I'm so sorry to bother you." "You hush with that." She straightened up with a little grunt and headed to the kitchen. I heard her putting the kettle on. "That husband of yours ought to be ashamed of himself. What kind of man throws his wife out in the middle of winter?" I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to defend Michael, to say he was just stressed from work, that he didn't mean it. But the other part of me, the part that was slowly warming up under the afghan, was tired. So tired of making excuses. Mrs. Anderson came back and sat down next to me. "How long has this been going on?" "What do you mean?" She gave me a look that said she wasn't buying any act. "Honey, I've lived a long time. I know what an unhappy woman looks like. And I've heard some of the yelling from over here." My face got hot with shame. "I didn't know you could hear." "Not a lot," she said quickly. "The walls are pretty thick. But sometimes when the windows are open or when it's really bad, I hear enough." The kettle whistled and she got up to pour the tea. She brought back 2 mugs and handed me one. It was chamomile, and I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, letting the heat seep into my frozen fingers. "He wasn't always like this," I found myself saying. "When we first got married he was different. Thoughtful. They often are," Mrs. Anderson said quietly. "At first." We sat in silence for a moment. I sipped the tea and felt it warm me from the inside out. My feet were starting to tingle as feeling came back, and it hurt, but in a good way. A live way. "I have a son," Mrs. Anderson said suddenly. "William. He lives in Detroit, works for a big marketing firm downtown." I nodded politely, not sure where this was going. "He's very successful. Worked his way up from entry level to senior vice president. He oversees about 50 employees now." She paused, looking at me over her mug. "Including your husband." Blinked. "What?" "William Anderson. He's Michael's boss. Has been for about 2 years now." My mind was racing. Michael worked for Anderson Marketing Solutions in Detroit. His boss was named William. I'd never made the connection because Anderson is such a common last name, and Michael rarely talked about his boss except to complain about deadlines. "Michael works for your son," I repeated just to make sure I'd heard right. "He does." Mrs. Anderson's eyes had a bit of steel in them now. "And William is very particular about the kind of men he wants representing his company. He has a zero-tolerance policy for certain behaviors, especially anything that could be considered domestic violence." My heart started beating faster. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm not asking you to." She held up a hand. "I know you're not, sweetheart. But I'm telling you that you have options. You don't have to go back over there tonight. You don't have to go back at all if you don't want to. You can stay here in my guest room for as long as you need." "That's too much." "It's not. I've got the space and I've got the time. And tomorrow morning, I'm gonna give William a call and have a little chat with him about what kind of man he's got working for him." I felt something crack inside my chest. Not in a bad way. More like something that had been holding too much pressure finally releasing. "Why are you doing this for me?" Mrs. Anderson reached over and patted my hand. "Because somebody should have done it for me 40 years ago. My first husband, God rest his soul now, he had a temper too. Nobody helped me back then. Everyone said marriage was marriage and you stuck it out. I did stick it out for 10 miserable years, until he finally left me for someone else. Best thing that ever happened to me, honestly. Met my second husband after that, William's father, and he showed me what real love looks like." She smiled, but there was sadness in it. "I see you over there, trying so hard to be small and quiet and perfect, thinking if you just do everything right, he'll go back to being the man you married. But honey, this is who he is. The other version was the mask. This is the real him. Tears started rolling down my face. I couldn't stop them. She was saying everything I'd been thinking but was too scared to admit. Stay here tonight, Mrs. Anderson said gently. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's Saturday, so you don't have to worry about work. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps. But right now you need to rest and be warm and be safe. I nodded, wiping at my eyes with the sleeve of her afghan. Okay. Thank you. She showed me to her guest room, which was small but cozy, with a handmade quilt on the bed and lace curtains on the window. She brought me an extra blanket and a glass of water. Bathroom's right across the hall, she said. There's a spare toothbrush in the medicine cabinet if you need it. You try to get some sleep now. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. I could see my house from the window. The lights were still on downstairs. Michael was probably watching TV like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just thrown his wife out into the freezing cold. My phone was over there. My whole life was over there. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the panic I usually felt when I thought about Michael being angry with me. Instead, I felt something different. I felt angry myself. I got under the covers and pulled them up to my chin. The bed smelled like lavender detergent. It was comfortable and warm and safe. Everything my own house hadn't felt like in months. I thought about what Mrs. Anderson had said about calling her son. Part of me felt guilty about that. Michael would lose his job. We'd lose his income. But then again, he'd just thrown me out of the house in my nightgown in the middle of winter. He could have killed me. My feet still ached from the cold. My arm hurt where he'd grabbed me. There'd probably be bruises tomorrow. I closed my eyes and let myself imagine it. Michael getting called into his boss's office. His face when he realized why. The fear he'd feel, the panic. The same panic he'd made me feel so many times. Maybe I was a bad person for wanting that. Or maybe I was just tired of being the only one who was scared. I drifted off to sleep thinking about tomorrow. And for once, the thought of what came next didn't fill me with dread. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the lace curtains and the smell of coffee brewing. For a second I forgot where I was. Then it all came rushing back. Michael. The door slamming. Cold. Mrs. Anderson. I sat up and looked around the guest room. Someone had left clothes folded on the chair by the door. I got up and examined them. A pair of sweatpants, a soft sweater, and even some underwear still in the package. The tags were still on the sweatpants too. Mrs. Anderson must have gone shopping early this morning, or maybe she'd had these stored away. I got dressed, used the bathroom, and found that toothbrush she'd mentioned. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. My eyes were puffy from crying, my hair was a mess, but there was something else. Something in my expression that looked different. Harder maybe. Or just more awake. I followed the smell of coffee to the kitchen and found Mrs. Anderson sitting at her table with the phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, she smiled and pointed to the coffee pot. Aha, she was saying into the phone. Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. In her nightgown, William. In 20-degree weather. My stomach dropped. She was already talking to her son. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the table, trying not to obviously eavesdrop but also hanging on every word. I don't care if he's got a good sales record, Mrs. Anderson continued, her voice firm. This is the kind of thing you need to know about. The kind of man who'd do that to his wife. Well, that says something about his character, doesn't it? There was a long pause while she listened. No, she's not pressing charges. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. She's sitting right here in my kitchen wearing clothes I had to buy her because all of hers are locked in that house with that man. Another pause. Well, I think that's a very good idea. Babe. I'll tell her. Love you too, sweetheart. Bye now. She hung up and looked at me with satisfaction in her eyes. William's coming over. Should be here in about an hour. He left Detroit 20 minutes ago. He's driving all the way here. Yes. We lived in Ann Arbor, about 45 minutes from Detroit depending on traffic. He is. He wants to talk to you himself, hear what happened. He's also gonna go have a conversation with Michael. She got up and started pulling things out of the fridge. But first you're gonna eat breakfast. You want eggs. Pancakes. I've got bacon. You really don't have to. Eggs and bacon it is, she said, completely ignoring my protest. You need your strength for today. I sipped my coffee and watched her work. She moved around the kitchen with ease, cracking eggs into a bowl, laying bacon in a pan. It was domestic and normal, and so different from the tension that had filled my own kitchen for months. Mrs. Anderson, I started. Call me Dorothy, honey. Dorothy. I don't want to cause problems. If Michael loses his job because of me. She spun around, spatula in hand. Stop that right now. If Michael loses his job, it's because of Michael. Because of his choices. His actions. You didn't make him throw you out of your own house. You didn't make him treat you the way he's been treating you. That's all on him. I swallowed hard. I know, but nothing. She turned back to the stove, flipping the bacon. I spent 10 years making excuses for a man who didn't deserve them. I'm not gonna sit here and watch you do the same thing. You're young. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Don't waste it on someone who doesn't treasure you the way you deserve. The eggs and bacon were perfect. I ate more than I thought I could, surprised by how hungry I was. Dorothy sat across from me with her own plate, and we ate in comfortable silence for a while. What do you do for work? She asked eventually. I'm a graphic designer. Freelance mostly. I work from home. So you've got your own income. It's not as much as Michael makes, but it's something. She nodded thoughtfully. That's good. That gives you options. I knew what she meant. Options to leave. Options to support myself. The conversation I'd been avoiding having with myself for months. I keep thinking maybe I should try harder, I admitted quietly. Like maybe if I just figured out what he needs, what makes him happy. Honey, no. Dorothy reached across the table and took my hand. Listen to me. Some men, they're just broken inside. And I don't mean broken in a way you can fix. I mean broken in a way that makes them want to break everything around them too. That's not your job to fix. That's not your burden to carry. But marriage is supposed to be for better or worse. Worse doesn't mean abuse. Worse means hard times, job loss, sickness, family trouble, things you go through together. It doesn't mean one person gets to treat the other person like garbage and call it a bad day. I blinked back tears. Everything she was saying made sense, but it was hard to hear. Hard to accept that the last 3 years had been me fighting for something that was already dead. The doorbell rang at 9:15. Dorothy got up to answer it and came back with a tall man in his 40s, dressed in jeans and a sweater. He had Dorothy's kind eyes but a more serious expression. You must be Ava, he said, extending his hand. I'm William Anderson. I shook his hand, feeling suddenly nervous. Thank you for coming all this way. Of course. He sat down at the table with us, and Dorothy immediately poured him a cup of coffee. My mom told me what happened last night. I wanted to hear it from you, if you're comfortable sharing. I told him everything. The fight over dinner, Michael's explosion, being thrown out, the locked door. William listened without interrupting, his expression getting darker as I talked. And this isn't the first time he's been aggressive, William asked when I finished. I hesitated, then shook my head. No. He's never thrown me out before, but the yelling, the name-calling, that's been happening for a while. And he's grabbed me before. Shoved me a few times. Nothing that left marks, usually. Usually. William's voice was sharp. I pulled up the sleeve of my borrowed sweater and showed him my arm. The bruises from where Michael had grabbed me were dark purple now. Clear finger marks visible. William's jaw clenched. Ava, I need to be straight with you. What Michael did is assault. You could press charges if you wanted to. I don't know if I want to do that. I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying you could. That's an option available to you. He leaned forward. Here's what I am gonna do though. I'm going to go over to your house right now and have a conversation with Michael. I'm going to tell him that he's on immediate suspension pending an investigation into his conduct. Our company has a code of ethics, and this violates it. My chest felt tight. He's gonna be so angry. Let him be angry. He's gonna be angry at me, at my company, at the situation. He doesn't get to be angry at you anymore. You're done being his punching bag. I should probably talk to him. No, William said firmly. You shouldn't. Not today. Not until you've had time to think about what you want, not what he wants. Mom said you're staying here for now. I looked at Dorothy, who nodded encouragingly. I guess so, I said. If that's really okay. It's more than okay, Dorothy said. You stay as long as you need. William stood up. I'm gonna go handle this. Ava, I want you to stay here. Don't answer if he calls. Don't respond to texts. Just take today to breathe and figure out your next move. Tomorrow, if you want, I can help you arrange to get your things from the house with a police escort. A police escort. The words felt surreal. It's standard in these situations. Keeps everyone safe and civil. I nodded numbly. This was all moving so fast. Yesterday morning I was making breakfast in my own kitchen, worried about whether the eggs were cooked right. Now I was talking about police escorts and suspension from work and ethics violations. William squeezed my shoulder gently. You're doing the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are. After he left, Dorothy and I sat in the living room. She turned on the TV, but neither of us really watched it. We were both listening, waiting, even though we couldn't actually hear anything from my house. About 30 minutes later, my phone started ringing. Dorothy had gone back over to my house earlier with a spare key I'd given her months ago for emergencies and retrieved my purse with my phone and keys inside. Michael hadn't even noticed her, apparently. He'd been asleep on the couch. I looked at the screen. Michael's name flashed across it. Don't answer, Dorothy said quietly. I didn't. I let it go to voicemail. Then he called again. And again. On the fourth call I turned the phone completely off. Good girl, Dorothy said. We had lunch around noon. Grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Simple and comforting. I was washing dishes when I saw William's car pull back into Dorothy's driveway. He came in looking tired but satisfied. Well, Dorothy asked. He's been informed of his suspension. 2 weeks, unpaid, while HR conducts an investigation. I told him that depending on what they find, it could result in termination. How'd he take it? Asked, my voice small. About as well as you'd expect. Lot of yelling. Lot of blaming you. Lot of saying I had no right to interfere in his personal life. William shrugged. I told him that when his personal life affects his professional character, it becomes my business. Especially when it involves potential criminal behavior. Did he say anything about me? Like where I was? He said you'd run off to your parents, probably to lie about him and make him look bad. William's expression was disgusted. I didn't correct him. Let him think what he wants. The important thing is that he knows there are consequences now. He can't just do whatever he wants without someone calling him on it. I sat down heavily on the couch. What do I do now? Now you decide what you want your life to look like, William said. Do you want to try to make it work with him? Do you want to leave? There's no wrong answer, Ava. It's your choice. If I go back, will he still have his job? William hesitated. The investigation is happening regardless. But I'll be honest with you, if you go back and this continues, if I hear about anything like this happening again, I won't hesitate to fire him. I can't have someone on my team who treats people this way. But if I leave, if you leave, the investigation still happens. His employment depends on him, not on you. On whether he takes responsibility, whether he gets help, whether he can demonstrate that he understands what he did was wrong. It should have been an easy choice. But 3 years of marriage, of loving someone, of hoping they'd change back into who they used to be, that didn't just disappear overnight. Can I have some time to think about it? Yes. Take all the time you need, William said. You're safe here. That's what matters right now. He left shortly after, heading back to Detroit. Dorothy made us tea and we sat together watching game shows, not talking about anything important. It was nice. Peaceful. Around dinner time I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls from Michael. 12 text messages. I opened the messages, my hands shaking. The first few were angry. Calling me names, blaming me for ruining his career. Saying I was pathetic for running to the neighbors. Then they shifted. Apologetic. Saying he was sorry he didn't mean it, he'd been stressed from work. Promising he'd never do it again. Then back to angry. Saying I was overdramatic, that I always blew things out of proportion, that normal couples fought and I was acting like a child. Then apologetic again. Begging me to come home. Saying he loved me. Saying he'd get help, he'd go to therapy, whatever I wanted. I showed them to Dorothy. She read through them with a frown. Classic cycle, she said. Anger, blame, apology, promises, repeat. It's like reading a script. He says he'll go to therapy. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But Ava, here's the thing about therapy. It only works if someone really wants to change. If they're just going to check a box to get you to come back, it won't stick. And then you're right back where you started. Except now he's even more resentful because he tried, and you're still not happy. I knew she was right. Deep down I knew. I think I want to leave him, I whispered. I think I've wanted to leave him for a while now. I just didn't know how. Dorothy pulled me into a hug. Now you know you don't have to do it alone. That night, lying in the guest bed again, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Felt hope. Real genuine hope that my life could be different. Better. That I could wake up without walking on eggshells. That I could make chicken for dinner and not worry about whether it was going to start World War III. I didn't text Michael back. I didn't call. I just turned off my phone again and went to sleep, planning for a future that didn't include him. Sunday morning I woke up with a plan. I'd spent all of Saturday thinking, and I knew what I needed to do. I found Dorothy in the kitchen, already making breakfast like it was her mission to feed me back to health. I want to get my stuff, I told her. Today, if possible. She smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. William already called the Ann Arbor Police Department yesterday. There's an officer who can meet you at the house at noon if that works. You guys really thought of everything, huh? We've got your back, honey. At 11:45, a police cruiser pulled up outside my house. Officer Davis was a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. William had driven back down from Detroit to be there too, and Dorothy came along for moral support. Here's how this works, Officer Davis explained. You go in, get your essential items, clothing, documents, anything you absolutely need. He's required to let you in and to remain civil. If he starts anything, I'm right here. Okay. I nodded, my heart pounding. Okay. Michael's car was in the driveway. He knew we were coming. William had texted him the details yesterday. I walked up to the door of the house I'd lived in for 3 years, and it felt like approaching a stranger's home. I rang the doorbell. Michael opened it. He looked terrible. Unshaven, bags under his eyes, wearing the same clothes from Friday night. When he saw me, his expression went through about 5 different emotions. Relief, anger, hope, resentment, fear. Ava, he said. Thank God. Can we please talk about this? I'm just here to get my things, I said, keeping my voice steady. Your things. You're not. You can't be serious about this. It was one fight. One mistake. Officer Davis stepped forward. Sir, she has the right to retrieve her belongings. Please step aside. Michael's face flushed red. He looked at the officer, then at William standing behind me, then back at me. You brought the cops. And my boss. Are you trying to ruin my life? I'm trying to get my stuff, I repeated. He stepped back, and I walked into my own house feeling like an intruder. Everything looked the same. The couch where we used to watch movies together. The kitchen where I'd made 1,000 meals. The wedding photo on the wall, both of us smiling like we meant it. I went upstairs to the bedroom and pulled out my old college duffel bag. I started packing. Clothes, shoes, my laptop, chargers, toiletries. My important documents were in the desk drawer. Birth certificate, social security card, passport. I grabbed all of it. Michael appeared in the doorway. Ava, please. We can fix this. I'll do the therapy. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't leave. Kept packing. You said you'd change before, Michael. After you shoved me into the counter last year. After you punched the wall next to my head. You always say you'll change. This time is different. It's not. I zipped up the duffel and looked at him directly for the first time. It's never different. You mean then you're sorry, then you're mean again. I'm tired, Michael. I'm so tired of being afraid in my own home. I never meant to make you afraid. But you did. You do. And last Friday you could have killed me. It was 20 degrees outside and you threw me out in my nightgown. If Dorothy hadn't been there, if she hadn't taken me in, what would have happened to me? His face crumpled. I wasn't thinking. I was just so angry. I made chicken instead of beef, Michael. That's what you were angry about. Chicken. He didn't have an answer for that. I grabbed my jewelry box from the dresser, then paused. My wedding ring was still on my finger. I looked at it for a long moment, this little gold band that was supposed to represent forever. Then I slid it off and placed it on the dresser. Ava, no. Don't do that. Please. I'm done, I said quietly. I'm filing for divorce. I walked past him and down the stairs. I did one more sweep, grabbing my favorite books, my sketch pads from my design work, a few photos of my family. The stuff that was actually mine, that existed before Michael. When I came back downstairs with my second bag, Michael was standing in the living room crying. I love you, he said. I know I messed up, but I love you. Love isn't supposed to hurt like this, I told him. Love isn't supposed to make you feel small and scared and worthless. That's not love, Michael. I don't know what it is, but it's not love. Officer Davis helped me carry my bags to Dorothy's house. William stayed behind for a moment, and I heard him say something to Michael in a low voice. I didn't catch all of it, but I heard restraining order and serious consequences. Back at Dorothy's, I dropped my bags in the guest room and just stood there for a minute. Done it. I'd actually done it. Dorothy appeared in the doorway with a glass of wine. Thought you might need this. I took it and drank half of it in one go. Is it supposed to feel this scary? Yes, she said simply. But also this freeing. You'll feel both for a while. That's normal. Over the next 2 weeks, I stayed with Dorothy while I figured things out. I found a lawyer who handled the divorce paperwork. It turned out that in Michigan, you could file for divorce without the other person's consent. I didn't need Michael to agree. I just needed to do it. William's HR investigation concluded that Michael had violated the company's code of conduct. They offered him a choice: resign or be terminated. He resigned. I felt a flicker of guilt about that, but Dorothy reminded me that he'd made his own choices. He could have been a good husband, she said. He could have been a good man. He chose not to be. These are just the consequences catching up. Michael tried calling and texting for the first week. Apologies, then anger, then threats to contest the divorce, then more apologies. My lawyer sent a cease and desist letter, and the messages stopped. I started looking for my own place. Just a small apartment, something I could afford on my freelance income. Dorothy insisted I didn't need to rush, but I wanted my own space. My own home where I could make chicken or beef or whatever the hell I wanted for dinner and nobody would care. I found a cute 1-bedroom in downtown Ann Arbor. It had big windows and hardwood floors and it was all mine. I signed the lease on a Tuesday, exactly 1 month after Michael had thrown me out. Dorothy helped me move in, along with William and his wife Emily, who I'd met a few times now. They brought housewarming gifts, towels and dishes and a coffee maker. Emily brought a plant. For new beginnings, she said, smiling. That first night in my own apartment, I ordered pizza and sat on the floor eating it straight from the box because I didn't have furniture yet. I'd never been happier. I started getting more freelance work, Enough that I raised my rates and started being pickier about clients. Joined a gym. Made some friends. Started going to a support group for people leaving abusive relationships. And hearing other people's stories made me realize how not alone I was. The divorce was finalized in early summer. Michael didn't contest it. According to my lawyer, he'd moved back in with his parents and was working some sales job in Grand Rapids. I didn't ask for details. That part of my life was over. Dorothy became like family. We had dinner together twice a week, and she taught me how to make her famous pot roast. William and Emily invited me to their 4th of July barbecue, and I met more good people who became friends. In August, I met a guy named James at a coffee shop. He was a teacher, soft-spoken and kind, and when I accidentally spilled my latte on his laptop, he just laughed and helped me clean it up. We started talking and didn't stop for 2 hours. When he asked for my number, I hesitated. The thought of dating, of trusting someone again, terrified me. But then I thought about what Dorothy had said. About her second husband, about real love, about not letting one bad experience rob me of future good ones. I gave James my number. Our first date was miniature golf, and I was terrible at it, and he didn't care. He didn't get mad when I accidentally hit the ball into the water feature. He just grinned and said, "Wanna go for 2 out of 3? It was easy with him. Like, fun. All the things I'd forgotten a relationship could be. I didn't tell him about Michael right away. That felt too heavy for early dates. But eventually, a few months in, I told him the whole story. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he said, "I'm glad you got out. And I'm glad you gave me a chance." By Christmas, I'd been in my apartment for 8 months. I'd painted the walls a soft blue. Bought real furniture. Hung up my own artwork. Made it a home. Dorothy hosted Christmas dinner and invited me, William's family. And yes, I brought James. We ate too much and laughed too loud and played board games until midnight. As I was leaving, Dorothy pulled me aside. "Look at you," she said, touching my cheek. "Look how happy you are." And I was. I really genuinely was. I'd gone from standing on a freezing porch in my nightgown, scared and alone, to this. To a life I'd built myself. To friends who felt like family. To a future that looked bright instead of terrifying. Sometimes I still thought about that night. About how differently things could have gone if Dorothy hadn't opened her door. If she hadn't made that call to William. If she hadn't given me a place to land when I had nowhere else to go. One person's kindness had changed everything. And now, a year and a half later, I was standing in my own apartment, happy and safe and free. And I knew without a doubt that I'd never go back. Not to Michael, not to that life, not to being small and scared. I'd found myself again. The version of me that existed before all of that. And she was stronger now. Braver. Ready for whatever came next. James proposed in the spring. I said yes, but we took it slow. Dated for 2 years total before we got married in a small ceremony with the people we loved most. Dorothy was in the front row, beaming like a proud mom. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And it was full of people who treated me with kindness and respect and love. Real love. The kind that didn't hurt. And every single day, I woke up grateful that I'd had the courage to walk away from what was killing me and toward what would save me. I'd walked out into the cold that night with nothing, and I'd found everything that mattered. Then.